My brother's crazy girlfriend turned our lives into a war zone. You're not man enough, she yelled as she slammed through our front door. After months of chaos, I broke down and left. Now I'm wondering if I'll ever get my life back after all the destruction. What next? Hello everyone, this post is primarily for me to express my thoughts and emotions regarding a specific situation. I will change the names of individuals involved because I prefer not to have my family discover this. I hope you all can understand my perspective and that I can articulate the incident clearly. As a brief introduction, we were all young during this situation. I am still quite young, at only 23 years old. And I believe that everyone involved was in their early 20s as well. This entire ordeal began while I was in college. As I navigated my first year, my family was undergoing significant changes. My father and stepmother divorced and they moved into an apartment complex, each residing in separate apartments. The middle child, Ashton, was permitted to take over the rent at their previous home. He chose to move in there with his girlfriend, Sarah, along with his best friend. To be honest, I was struggling in college. I wouldn't say I was miserable or that everything was bleak, but I was facing expulsion for not attending the sermons frequently enough. After staying in the summer dorms for about a month, Ashton invited me to move in with them and even help transport all of my belongings to their place. This move appeared to be promising. I didn't have many issues with him, his best friend was genuinely cool, and I thought his girlfriend was tolerable. That is when things started to deteriorate. Once I had settled in and switched to the local fast food restaurant that I had been working at, my time there was quite pleasant. We all worked night shifts except for Sarah. She held a job for a while but eventually quit due to her mental health issues. As far as I am aware, she has not worked since then. We all got along well, there was no animosity among us, and overall it felt relatively calm. I cannot clearly explain what happened as I worked independently and managed my own tasks. However, I was aware that issues were brewing between Sarah and the best friend. They both vied for more of Ashton's time. It did not seem serious while I observed, but I later learned that Sarah did not appreciate Ashton spending time with his best friend. I suppose that was when the tension began to escalate. As I continued to live there, I noticed the situation worsening. My brother and his girlfriend began to argue frequently. These arguments would not have been as troublesome if they had not resulted in damage throughout the house. They cracked the television during a dispute regarding finances, and my brother even split the front door by kicking it out of frustration. This occurred after he had gotten physical with her at a gas station and was nearly beaten up. Additionally, she had attempted to overdose on her medication, which left a significant hole in the drywall. It felt as if I was living with two tornadoes that ravaged the home. Honestly, if I had not spent so much time outside of the house or asleep, I likely would have left much sooner. I vividly recall an incident when the couple began to argue and I attempted to intervene. Naturally, they told me to go to my room as if I were a child rather than his older brother. To be fair, I was mostly passive and quiet, so I rarely tried to speak up. Instead of retreating to my room, I chose to walk the 2 miles to my job in the summer heat. I live in Texas, enjoyed a good meal, and relaxed for about 2 hours. Subsequently, my brother texted me to ask where I was so he could pick me up. The ride back home was uncomfortable. Nevertheless, this was not too overwhelming for me personally, so I chose to stay there. It was later that the situation became intolerable. I cannot recall exactly who did what, but at this point it no longer matters. Sarah acquired some inexpensive yet tasty meat for the household, which was supposed to last for a significant duration based on my recollection. However, one day she claimed that the best friend had discarded all the meat they had purchased and that he was attempting to provoke a conflict. From my perspective, I do not believe that was true. He was a laid-back guy, enjoyed watching anime with me, and we even went to my workplace to share a meal at one point. She did not respond well to this situation. She completely snapped, vandalizing his door by stabbing it with whatever object she could find and writing "Welcome home, bitch" with some sort of condiment. It was outrageous. I believe that was when he decided to move out, or at the very least, he returned most of his belongings to his mother's house. I say most because Sarah felt he had not faced enough consequences. While he was at work, she ransacked his room. She spread dirty cat litter everywhere, dumped the trash can onto his bed, and even tossed around a half-eaten cake. I did not witness much of this because Ashton left work early to clean it up. He understood that his best friend would have a meltdown if he saw the damage. I am astonished that the best friend continued to stay there, but he was seemingly loyal to Ashton. This dynamic changed dramatically after the major incident. I had just returned home from a long night shift, having walked back as well. The accumulation of fatigue wore me out. Hours later, I was shaken awake by my father, who came to check on me. Apparently, Ashton had gone to our parents to express that he was finished with Sarah and wanted some space. While he was doing that, Sarah was causing chaos at our place. She was frantically packing her belongings and becoming increasingly agitated. Eventually, our dad decided to visit me to ensure she was not engaging in any harmful behavior. After gathering what she could, she hurriedly left. Most of her items remained at the house, and she even left her phone behind. It was clearly her way of ensuring she could return. Once she departed, our parents informed us to call them if she returned and they would come back. Both of them left and the rest of us began to tidy up. Ashton looked dejected as he cleaned and cried. To give him some privacy, the best friend and I headed to Walmart to purchase new locks. As quickly as possible, we changed the locks to prevent her from entering whenever she pleased. After that, we all retreated to our rooms until we heard Ashton yelling from the living room. Sarah had come back. She was shouting at Ashton through a large hole she had kicked in the broken front door, accusing him of not being man enough and questioning his masculinity. That phone call was one of the quickest I had ever made. I called my mother to inform her that she was back, and she replied, "We are on our way." It was not the longest drive, but we were stuck with the chaos for a brief period. At that point, my anger was boiling over. I shouted that she needed to leave and to get out of our lives. In frustration, I turned around and punched a deep hole into the thick wooden wall. That was when the adrenaline wore off and I found myself unable to move, falling to my knees. Finally, our parents arrived. My father remained calm, insisting that she had to leave while Sarah insulted him directly. Ashton had moved to the end of the driveway, sobbing about the situation. Suddenly, Sarah switched her target and began insulting my stepmother. At that moment, my father lost his temper. He started yelling back. In a flash, Ashton rushed back, confronting my dad and yelling at him for yelling at his girlfriend. Really? The same guy who was crying earlier about wanting to separate from her was now defending her. My dad demanded that both of them leave and find somewhere else to stay. We all returned inside, somewhat shaken by the confrontation. However, my brother had a brilliant idea. Despite being told to leave, what did he do? He crawled through the hole Sarah had made in the door to continue the argument. The next few minutes were chaotic. My dad began slapping Ashton on the head in frustration. Everyone else got involved. I made the wise decision to leave and call the police. By the time I finished explaining the situation to them, I rushed back in and separated my brother and father. Neither was injured, though I was sure both would have bruises. Just then, the police arrived. We all had to provide statements regarding our side of the story. Somehow, the police instructed everyone except Ashton and Sarah to leave the premises. As a result, I decided to spend the following few days with my father, trying to maintain my composure. After staying there for around 3 days, I returned to the house. Naturally, I still had to pay rent, so I wanted to go back. Upon my arrival, Ashton and Sarah feigned an exaggerated show of appreciation, claiming they valued me highly. This was after the way they had treated me for months. However, more complications lay ahead. The best friend had moved out, which meant we had reduced income, and we needed to meet with the landlord due to all the issues, including the police involvement. So about 2 days later, we had to meet with the landlord. The conversation did not go smoothly. He disapproved of the ongoing issues in the house and was prepared to evict us. Frankly, my father was the only reason we managed to stay. Having done considerable work for the landlord, my dad was able to persuade him to allow us to remain, contingent on his signing a new agreement with us. It was not the best deal, to be honest. Rent increased by $150 and we were required to pay a $1,000 deposit. I was living paycheck to paycheck and I was sure Ashton was as well. Returning home, I felt exhausted and merely wanted to sleep. Before I dozed off, the two of them entered my room to say that we would figure everything out regardless of the circumstances. With that, I fell asleep and they left. About an hour later, I woke up to a phone call. It was my mother calling, so I answered. She inquired whether I knew where Ashton and Sarah were. I told her I did not, and she then revealed something shocking. They had discovered the location of the best friend's mother and were berating him for next month's rent, demanding an additional amount as well. That was when I broke. I guess the stress of it all combined with my exhaustion caused me to dissolve into tears. I got up, packed a small bag of clothes, and asked my mother to pick me up while crying uncontrollably. That was when I resolved to live with my father instead of dealing with them. If you thought this was the end of the drama, this train wreck had more energy left. Since I had left nearly all my belongings there, while the best friend had only a few items remaining, we decided to return to retrieve our things. I of course asked my father to accompany me in case any unusual incidents occurred. Initially, everything went smoothly. I began loading my items into my father's car while the best friend loaded his truck. It was not until the very end that things escalated. I was in my room, gathering everything into my arms when I heard a shout. Apparently, Sarah charged at the best friend, tackled him, and began hitting him while he was on the ground. My father intervened when I entered. Sarah was shouting obscenities at him, blaming him for everything. Fortunately, nothing serious ensued, and that seemed to be the conclusion of it. The only aftermath was that they vandalized the house before leaving, which meant my father had to clean it up. That summarizes the chaotic situation we found ourselves in. Truthfully, that experience affected me profoundly for a long time. I fell into a depression and lacked the motivation to do anything for an extended period. Thankfully, I am doing much better now. Thank you for taking the time to read this lengthy, meandering account of a distressing situation. Story 2. Banned from my favorite store because of my ex-BFF's drama when I wasn't even the problem. You know why, the cashier said, but I was just trying to be a regular customer. After a decade of friendship, who knew Maggie would give me the boot? What happened next? I, female, 22 years old, stopped communicating with my best friend of 10 years in early 2024. Maggie and I were somewhat inconsistent friends in the last few years of our relationship. There is a lot of background information regarding why we ceased our communication that is quite specific and personal. But the summary is that she began dating my other friend Christy right after Christy ended her relationship with her ex, Lily. I wanted to maintain my friendship with Lily, but Christy insisted that I could not. Christy and Maggie gradually pushed me out of their social activities, displaying immature behavior by instigating arguments and being passive-aggressive about various matters. Eventually, I spoke with Maggie and inquired about what was bothering her. She apologized and acknowledged that she and Christy should have communicated with me more effectively. She subsequently asked me not to inform Christy about her comments, but revealed her frustrations related to other issues that were unrelated to Maggie herself. These grievances lacked real substance, leaving me more confused than anything. I promised to hold off on discussing these matters with Christy until she initiated the conversation, and Maggie committed to encouraging Christy to do so. Shortly afterward, both Christy and Maggie went silent, failing to text or talk to me for several days. In the meantime, they broke our streaks of communication and ceased sharing any TikToks, Reels, or similar content, which was very unusual for them. I reached out to Christy a couple of times to check in, but she left me on read. Maggie dodged my inquiries and either played naive or did not respond at all. Eventually, I asked Christy once more, and she informed me that she was upset about something else trivial and specific, which honestly did not matter to me or even cross my mind, and did not affect her in any way. I replied to her in a much nicer manner than was necessary, apologizing profusely and asking what she needed from me since she had requested space without elaborating on her definition of that term. I also sought clarification to avoid making her uncomfortable or further upsetting her. She left my message unread for several hours and did not reply. At this point, I felt like I had reached my limit. I had only just reconnected with Christy after several years of not communicating, and as I mentioned, my friendship with Maggie had been sporadic for a while. I began to sense that this was the conclusion of their role in my life and decided to block both of them permanently. I sent them both a message explaining that, for the sake of my mental health, I needed to step back from our friendships, but I wished them well in their relationship and personal lives. Within a few minutes, Maggie contacted a mutual friend of ours, whose house I happened to be at that moment, and began spreading numerous falsehoods about me. I was shocked. We were 21 years old at that point. This felt like something out of high school drama. I advised my friend not to engage with Maggie's claims, and they defended me, ultimately choosing to cut off both Maggie and Christy as well. A couple of weeks later, I reached out to Lily to apologize for stopping communication abruptly and explained everything that had happened according to Christy. We quickly realized there were many discrepancies between what Christy had been telling me and what she had been relaying to Lily. Essentially, everything we thought we knew about her was slightly different, if not entirely different. Even the most minor details, like childhood memories or incidents that occurred during high school or while she was dating Lily, as well as matters related to mental health and personality traits, varied significantly. We grew very close and remain good friends to this day. As my friendship with Lily deepened, Christy began appearing at my place of employment. She had previously noted that she only ever visited that particular chain because I worked there and wanted to support me, so her arriving and making purchases in a manner that would likely lead to interactions with me felt somewhat odd. When I took her order, I ensured it was prepared flawlessly, and my coworkers who recognized her treated her with exceptional kindness. She would disappear for a while and then show up multiple days in a row, leading to several coworkers reaching out to me on days I wasn't working. About a month or two before I left that store, her visits ceased. I relocated to the area where Maggie lived a few months after we stopped being friends. Around the same time, Christy stopped appearing, and I discovered that I was only about 10 minutes away from one of my favorite places that I had originally found through Maggie, which had previously required a 30-minute journey for me. I was thrilled and invited Lily to accompany me after we had run some errands. Upon entering, I quickly realized that Maggie was now working there. She had been unemployed for several months when we stopped communicating, so I had no idea she would be there. I was incredibly overwhelmed by the unexpected encounter, which caused me to panic and run back to my car, much to Maggie's evident satisfaction. Lily followed me to ensure I was okay and then returned inside to buy what I had intended to purchase. A month or two later, I took Lily and our two other roommates to the store, decided to run in quickly alone and then resume our evening plans. We parked, and I found Maggie outside the front door with one of her coworkers. Both of them immediately entered the store, and I followed shortly. Maggie remained at the front near the window while her coworker assisted me at the counter. When I returned to my car, Lily informed me that Maggie had been peering out the window and taking photos of her and my vehicle. After that, my roommates chose not to accompany me anymore. This was a place I genuinely enjoyed, and I did not want to stop going, as it sold products I frequently relied on for pain and anxiety management. I continued visiting, usually accompanied to help assuage my anxiety about potentially encountering Maggie. However, whenever I went alone, I tried to engage in friendly conversations with the employees while avoiding Maggie as much as possible. As months went by, the employees began to treat me poorly, but I ignored it since I only visited once every week or two and it was not a major issue, plus Maggie was only present half of the time. Eventually, approximately 7 months after I resumed being a regular customer, I walked in again with moral support. As I approached the door, Maggie was directly behind it. She exclaimed, "Oh, sorry, I thought it was locked," and dashed to the back of the store. The friend who accompanied me claimed they saw her exit through a door back there. We had visited a few days prior and had left prematurely, so we returned, finding that Maggie saw us and promptly retreated to the back before we could even reach the counter, so we did not think anything of it. We ignored the unusual behavior and approached the counter to finalize our purchase. The employee there displayed an unprofessional demeanor, and before we could even attempt to complete the transaction, she informed me that she would allow me to purchase this last time, but because of issues between me and her coworker, I was no longer welcome in the store. When I inquired about the reason, she simply replied, "I think you know why." This irritated me because I genuinely did not understand. There was a lot of history between Christy and me, as well as between Maggie and me, but I had never acted in a way that would warrant being barred from any establishment. I reiterated that I truly did not know why I was being treated this way, as I had always been respectful and kind as a customer and had never harassed Maggie or made her uncomfortable during my visits. I was merely a customer. If they were genuinely curious, they could review the camera footage. I admit that I raised my voice slightly by the end of my statement, stressing that Maggie's girlfriend had behaved similarly at my workplace, and I had chosen not to escalate it because it was unwarranted. I clarified that I had never frequented that store because of Maggie, that I was unaware she worked there when I relocated to the area, and that I returned because it was the highest quality product I could find locally. The employee appeared extremely condescending and told me she could attempt to discuss the matter with management again, but I interrupted, stating that I did not want to return if that was going to be the nature of our interactions. I informed my friend that we were leaving and we walked out. I understand that a significant amount of context is missing, several years of personal matters that I do not wish to disclose on the internet since they are quite intense, including abuse, assault, etc. But I simply wanted to express what I could and see what people's thoughts were, I guess. Story 3. My older sister cut me off after a bizarre jealousy-fueled rant, claiming I'm a useless loser for focusing on college instead of bills. I was devastated, but with my friend's support, my life moved on. Now I'm thriving while she's lost in her own bitterness. Curious to know how this all unfolded. So last year in November, my older sister, 30 years old female, cut me off 20 years old female. This all began due to a trivial argument that she not only instigated but could only be described as a rant fueled by resentment. She goes off on about 10 different tangents, ranging from my interest in K-pop boy groups to the fact that our parents do not hate me for being gay, to claiming I am a jobless loser and asserting that my major is worthless. If you believe that this argument seems incoherent, you would be correct. There is nothing that made sense in her bizarre and lengthy paragraph to me. She simply invents a multitude of falsehoods about me and my college life and then becomes angry about them. Rather than inquiring about my updates or my experiences, she chose to fabricate stories in her mind and direct her anger toward me. I assert that she is envious, because it seems she is using me as a means to deflect from the aspects of her life that she dislikes. You do not have a job or pay bills. I do not because I attend college full-time. My entire family shares the expenses for everything, and I acknowledge that we are struggling financially. I choose not to work because, personally, my college experience consumes all my time, and I genuinely cannot focus on a job with the amount of coursework I have. My sister covered bills when she was in college, which I find quite unfortunate because she should not have had to bear that burden, but we were in dire financial straits, and she was compelled to take on that responsibility at 19. You do not have any goals besides going to college to pursue a degree you could not care less about. I fail to understand how this is a flaw of mine. Prior to my recent change of major, I was studying textile marketing. This does not qualify as a dumb degree and would have guaranteed me a job. I simply did not find fulfillment in it. Additionally, my sister cannot argue here either because she despised her major while in college, and currently she detests her job designing cabinets for a living. I find it perplexing that she takes it as a personal affront that I dislike my major when she did the same at my age. She is going to take advantage of her wealthy friends like the parasite she is, because she does not have a job or ambition. She states this because I have wealthy friends at college who sometimes assist me with expenses. The kindest thing a friend has ever done for me was to plan a trip to Virginia for spring break last year. I shared with my friends that I had never left North Carolina, and one friend decided we should indeed visit Virginia. It meant so much to me because they did not have to do it, and I did not even suggest the idea. However, he did this out of genuine care for me, wanting me to have a special and enjoyable experience. Since he has a partner, his intentions were not romantic. He is simply a genuinely kind person who wished for his friend to have a memorable new experience. Having never had a close male friend before, this gesture meant a lot to me. I did not take advantage of him. I informed him that I could not cover some expenses, such as dinner, and he paid for me because he did not want me to feel uncomfortable while everyone else was eating. He was under no obligation to help me, but he expressed that he wanted us to enjoy the trip together and that I should not worry about the costs for something as simple as a meal. He did not need to do this at all, yet it meant an immense amount to me that he did. I believe she is genuinely angry and envious that I have a friend willing to help me without any ulterior motives. He does not harbor romantic feelings for me. He was not compensated for doing this for me. None of our friends were aware that he planned this trip for me, so he did not seek recognition for his kindness. His only reward for this generous gesture was my happiness and that I am his friend. The resentment behind her calling me a parasite for his kind act reveals her jealousy that I have found a friend willing to do this for me. She is a loser and all she does is annoy everyone around her. This comment solidified my feelings. This was not an actual argument about my shortcomings. This was simply my older sister attempting to articulate everything she could think of to hurt me. The previous arguments at least presented what could be considered real points of contention, but the moment she called me a loser and voiced that I am annoying, I realized there was no valid basis for this argument. She simply considers me an inferior person and finds me unbearable. She believes I am a loser. She believes I am annoying. Therefore, she cannot fathom why anyone would choose to spend their time with me. Without sounding overly pessimistic or self-deprecating, I do not understand why. I do not comprehend why I have friends who go out of their way to assist me. I do not understand why I have friends who deliberately choose to spend time with me. I think I am annoying and I believe I am a loser. I have already internalized these ideas about myself, yet I still have many people around me, regardless of my self-perception. I am incredibly grateful, beyond what any words can express. My sister has openly shared her disdain for her life. As the eldest daughter in our Asian American family, I know she has faced many challenges growing up. When she sought her independence, she left our home immediately. She attended a college she disliked and chose a major that did not fulfill her, but it did provide her with a job. She has a partner who is somewhat disinterested in her. Our parents' health is deteriorating rapidly, and now she wishes to move back. I recognize that she is currently experiencing a lot, yet I am still confused as to why she thought it was acceptable to hurt my feelings through that disjointed, meaningless rant. It was supposed to be about my flaws, but it sounded more like she despised the fact that I possess what she lacked. I assert that she is envious because I am living the reality she faced over a decade ago when she was my age and in college. I am genuinely enjoying my college experience and having fun with friends. I am not suffering like she was, and I think she is simply shocked. Furthermore, considering that she believes I will annoy everyone around me and that they will abandon me soon enough, she cannot comprehend why I am thriving. In any case, I cried intensely while reading these texts. It was as if, in reflecting on my previous hurts, all those past experiences paled in comparison. This was a level of pain I had never experienced before. My roommate and my friend were in my room at the time, witnessing my breakdown and comforting me for hours. This truly represents the most pain I have ever endured in my life. And yet, my life continued. I still needed to take my exams, I still had classes to attend, I still had projects to complete, I still had time to socialize with friends. It is almost humorous. I was utterly heartbroken and my eyes were swollen for days afterward, but gradually I began to feel better. In fact, about a week later, I was back to smiling. Of course, whenever I shared the full story with a friend, I would still sob uncontrollably, but as long as I did not dwell on it too much, I was fine. I am writing this near the conclusion of my spring semester. An entire semester later, I can now laugh at how absurd her rant was. I cannot genuinely feel anything regarding it other than the realization that she wrote those words hoping they would hurt me, that I would feel miserable. She wanted me to experience pain, which would signify that she had won. However, after discussing it with my friends, they all mentioned that at least I have moved on with my life. My sister cut ties by blocking my phone number, so I reciprocated by blocking her on all other platforms and carried on with my day. Yes, she succeeded in hurting my feelings, and now she no longer has to confront me. But here I am. I remain the same person I was before and after she treated me this way. This did not affect me as much as both SHE and I believed it would. I am proud of how well I have managed this situation, which is likely due to the unwavering support of my friends. I do not think I could have navigated this experience alone. I have wanted to write this post for some time, but I kept either crying or including excessive details. I needed to express this because although I claim I am over it, it still brings me to tears today. I am not fully over it. I have merely accepted the fact that my sister and I will not communicate for the foreseeable future. This makes me sad. I have looked up to my older sister my entire life. She has imparted much life advice to me and I have adhered to many of her suggestions. It saddens me that she has viewed me with disdain all this time, but it is what it is. Story 4. Facing a whirlwind of emotions at 20, I struggle with depression, autism, and OCD. I can't live without him. As I leapfrog from connections to fears, my heart races with questions. What if he stops loving me? Can I escape this suffocating anxiety before it consumes me? I have depression, autism, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. I have experienced suicidal thoughts since I was 13 years old, and I possess an anxious attachment style. It feels like I am leapfrogging from person to person. Initially, it was two friends who were very dear to me. Losing them made me realize that I was naive to believe that best friends exist. Next, there was a therapist whom I trusted deeply but who ultimately abandoned me. After that, I distanced myself from my aunt, someone I pushed away because I was in so much pain. Now, I cannot imagine living without my boyfriend. I often find myself needing a great deal of reassurance, even when it seems like nothing is wrong. I feel like I am too much to handle, and I am afraid I will push him away simply by needing him too much. Sometimes I discuss these fears generally with him, while at other times I tend to keep them bottled up because I am scared of driving him away. Whenever I do share my feelings with him, he is kind and reassures me. However, I find myself needing that reassurance again and again. This is not the first time I have felt insecure with him. While his reassurance helps, as I mentioned, I continue to seek it more frequently, yet I fear he will eventually grow weary of me and my needs. I remember that as I grew closer to my aunt, I developed a significant fear of her abandoning me because of me. I would ask her to promise me countless times that she would not leave. I believe that this fear and obsession contributed to the diagnosis of obsessive-compulsive disorder given to me by that same therapist. Lately, I feel that this obsession is resurfacing. I do not know how, but over time the obsession gradually dissipated. One of the obsessive thoughts I experience is, what if he stops loving me? One of my compulsions is constantly seeking reassurance, such as asking for promises repeatedly. I think part of the reason I have this fear is due to our history. This is not our first time being together, it is actually our third. The first time we broke up was by mutual agreement because I needed to calm myself down due to a lot of turmoil in my life at that time. Then, during the second relationship, I never saw it coming when he broke up with me, and my suicidal thoughts spiraled out of control. Afterward, we became friends with benefits, and after about 2 months, he informed me that he had found a girlfriend. A month passed where we exchanged texts only 2 or 3 times. Then he texted me saying he had something important to discuss. He missed me. He suggested we could be together without her knowing, and I told him that while I wanted to be with him, I would not if he was still with someone else. Subsequently, he broke up with her, and this time has been the longest we have been together, almost 8 months. All of this occurred in less than a year. We reconnected in November 2023, and the third time we got together was in August 2024. The first relationship lasted about a month to a month and a half, and the second period lasted around 2 months. And it is a long-distance relationship. We have not yet met in person. He resides in Europe while I am in South America. He is 25 years old. Last week, during one of our calls, I learned that he began studying Spanish about a month ago. He expressed his desire to say sweet things to me and mentioned that he needs to meet my family soon, which is why he wants to be perfect. I am genuinely amazed that he is learning it. Do you understand what I mean? We are now calling each other weekly. On Tuesday night, he informed me that he would not have Wi-Fi the next day as he would be staying at a friend's house. I told him I would miss him and he responded similarly. What struck me as odd was the absence of Wi-Fi. Couldn't he ask his friend for the Wi-Fi? Perhaps I am just overreacting, being dramatic, or overthinking. I am uncertain of what is happening with me. Last night he texted me to say he did not stay there because his friend was experiencing problems at home and that he missed me. I mentioned that I had watched a movie and afterward he sent me a good night text because he was tired. I hoped we would talk at least a little bit. Do you understand what I mean? It made me sad. I felt something deep inside and it hurt. My first response was, oh, okay. While I understand his situation, we had not heard from each other the entire day, and yesterday felt long for me. I felt insecure. I know he truly meant it when he said last night that he loves me a lot, but still, maybe he didn't miss me as much since he was having fun. I am an age regressor, and about a month ago we discussed how he wants to be my caregiver. He sometimes calls me little one, and when I ask him to tell me a story, he does. My mother is unaware of my age regression because she is entirely opposed to it, claiming it is not normal. I do not plan to disclose it to her ever. I am anxious because last week my boyfriend told me he needed to talk to me about our calls, indicating that the situation is neither entirely good nor entirely bad, but somewhere in between. I feel overwhelmed with anxiety. I fear it could be something that profoundly affects me as I am very sensitive. Prior to his indication that we needed to have a conversation, I had already been crying hard in my room due to my uncertainty about many issues. That was on Saturday and today is Thursday, yet we are still communicating. I worry that I will end up crying, I do not know why. I feel as though I am suffocating. What if this is the breaking point when everything begins to fade slowly? I fear that when the day of another breakup arrives, I will be blindsided and have to endure it completely alone again. I recall that a few days after the second breakup, I watched Corpse Bride. The day after watching that movie, I self-harmed after maintaining my cleanliness for months. About a month ago, I informed my therapist that I have a boyfriend. She understood very well, and I felt such relief. I can finally discuss my long-distance relationship with someone. Perhaps he will grow tired of me. I do not know, and we still have not addressed what he wants to discuss regarding our calls. I have experienced similar obsessions with both my therapist and my aunt, but more so with my aunt. I feel exhausted and this situation is so confusing. I do not want things to repeat themselves with him. What if I lower my guard again and end up blindsided? That is what happened with my therapist and during the second breakup with my boyfriend. It is not the first time I have heard the words, "You can always count on me, I will not leave you," and I wonder if it is a trap. Am I still naive? Is opening up a mistake? What if I trust those words and end up hurt again for having been foolish? This is not the first time and something tells me it will not be the last. Just when I finally feel safe, bam, I do not want to fall for that again. The uncertainty is suffocating me. I am terrified to the point that sometimes it paralyzes me. I cannot breathe. It feels as though I will explode at any moment. I cannot take this anymore. What is happening to me? What is wrong with me? I feel like I have been freaking out over nothing. Last night he promised he would talk to me today, so I sent him a text saying, "Hi." He is online intermittently but has not reached out until now. Before writing all of this, I was literally panicking. I cannot live without him. I apologize for the disjointed nature of this message, but if you have managed to read this far, thank you for your time.